She asks him if he's happy now that everything has gone the way he wanted. Yunsu simply stares back at her, his expression unreadable. Chaya tells him to stop looking at her like that. Breaking the silence, Yunsu asks if she wants him to end Nam Haewon, adding that he'll need her help, of course. With hesitation, she says yes and stands up. She tells him she'll help him get the blood he craves, and for the first time, Yunsu gives a smile. In a sudden burst of anger, she jerks the umbrella out of his hands, letting the rain drench him too. A thought crosses her mind. If she's going down, she won't go down alone. But as her strength falters, she stumbles into him. He catches her in his arms, the rain pouring down on both of them. Even in that moment, neither of them completely trusts the other. Moments later, Chaya loses consciousness. When she opens her eyes again, she's at home, with Gurim standing over her, scolding her about catching a fever. She weakly comments that if she had a younger brother, he'd probably be like Gurim. In response, Gurim surprises her with a secret. He tells her that when vampires make a promise, they put their lives on the line. He explains that if Yunsu promised to guarantee her safety, it means he can no longer harm her. The next day, feeling determined, Chea tells Gurim to call Park Yunsu and tell him that she wants to meet him immediately. She meets up with Yunsu in his car. Yunsu smirks and teases her, saying he thought she had died yesterday. She responds, saying that there are people in worse conditions than her, so she can't afford to die. Yunsu, unfazed, comments that it would be amusing to see her die alone. She retorts that watching him beg for his life while dying of thirst had been quite a sight. Their banter trails off, leaving an awkward silence between them for a moment. Breaking the tension, Chea asks what he meant by needing her help. Yunsu explains that he needs her to call Haewon and arrange a meeting. He hands her a knife, telling her to use it if things go wrong. She hesitates for a moment before asking if he will actually show up if she calls. Yunsu simply smiles in response. When Haewon receives Chea's call, he becomes ecstatic and eagerly agrees to meet her. She arranges for them to meet in an abandoned location. Upon seeing her, Haewon greets her with a warm smile, saying she looks beautiful and asking if she's finally decided to come back to him. Chea coldly flicks his hand away and tells him that she regrets not finishing him off when she had the chance. Then she loudly calls for Park Yunsu. Haewon's expression darkens at the mention of Yunsu's name. Anger and jealousy flare in his eyes, and as she wonders why Yunsu isn't coming out, she calls for him again. Before she can react, Haewon strikes her from behind with a brick, his face twisted in a rage fueled by jealousy. Chea collapses to the ground, unconscious. She wakes up in an unfamiliar house, disoriented and tense. Haewon is there holding a document and coldly demands she sign a marriage contract. Chea refuses, but Haewon grabs her hand, attempting to force her fingerprint onto the paper. She jerks her hand away angrily. In response, Haewon slaps her, his voice sharp and menacing as he says, "The situation you're in is very real. You should think carefully about your choices if you want to walk out of here on your own two legs." Left alone in the room, Chea is overwhelmed by fear, unsure of what to do. Then her eyes fall on the knife Yunsu had given her. Gripping it tightly, she begins to question whether this is her only option to rid herself of Haewon. Suddenly, a realization dawns on her. Yunsu must have anticipated all of this. The help he claimed to need wasn't simply about luring Haewon out. It was about using her to do the dirty work he couldn't, thanks to his hunting ban. She concludes that he's likely nearby, waiting in the shadows, ready to appear as soon as he smells the scent of blood. A short while later, Haewon returns to the room. "I'm the only one left for you," he says, his voice low and chilling. He pulls her into an unwelcome hug, murmuring that she's pitiful and unlucky. But before he can say more, a sudden stabbing sound fills the room. "Don't pity me," she says coldly. Not far away, Yunsu catches the scent of blood, the very scent he's been waiting for. He appears instantly, his vampiric instincts taking over as he lunges at Haewon. Haewon cries out in pain as Yunsu sinks his fangs into him. However, Yunsu quickly pulls back in confusion. The blood lacks the scent he craves. Bewildered, he turns to Chea. "You were fooled, Park Yunsu," she says. She hadn't stabbed Haewon. Instead, she had wounded her own leg. Yunsu calls her name and begins walking toward her. She tries to run, but he grabs her, asking where she thinks she's going before tossing her onto the bed. He accuses her of wanting to die by playing games with vampires. She retorts that he can't actually hurt her. When he demands to know how she knows that, she brushes him off, saying it's none of his business. Wiping the blood from his shirt, she mockingly asks what he's going to do now that he's banned from hunting. Yoon-soo finds her taunts deeply irritating. He throws the knife aside and, overcome by his vampire instincts, nearly bites her. She screams, reminding him of his promise, which stops him in his tracks. Annoyed, he mutters that she's unbearable, but Chaya grabs him by the collar and boldly tells him she's stronger than he thinks. Then, she leaves him alone in the room. Outside, as rain pours down, Chaya reflects on her misfortune. Unable to walk properly because of her injury, she suddenly sees Gurim standing nearby with an umbrella. He had followed them out of curiosity about the meeting. Chaya thanks him for the information he provided about vampires. Gurim, concerned, asks about Park Yoon-soo, and she casually responds that Yoon-soo is a bit mad right now. Meanwhile, inside, Yoon-soo is reeling from the realization that the blood he smelled earlier truly belonged to Han Chaya. He recalls the small scratch on her neck back in the alley and is stunned that such a tiny amount of blood had caused such a reaction. As he pieces everything together, he remembers how every time he smelled Chaya's blood, it has driven him to the brink of losing control. He feels foolish for not recognizing the truth sooner, even though it was so obvious. Despite everything, Yoon-soo concludes that Chaya couldn't have known about this herself. Unlike Haewon and even Chaya, he believes she isn't unlucky, she's extraordinarily lucky.